The whistle cut through the desert like a banshee's scream, sharp, relentless, and final. Will Holloway sat stiff on the passenger car bench, hands clenched around a worn photograph. The edges had curled with time, but the image inside was still clear, his son, Eli, giggling in the sun, a birthmark shaped like a five-pointed star glowing on his tiny wrist. That mark, that boy, gone for 6 months, vanished after raiders burned Will's ranch to the ground and slaughtered his wife. 6 months of searching, dead ends, lies, dust, grief, and now a screech. "Stop the damn train," someone yelled, but it wasn't just a cry. It was a command from instinct. Will's eyes caught a flicker beyond the glass. A shape, crawling, small, helpless. The moment he saw the baby on the tracks, the world stopped spinning. His boots hit the gravel before his brain caught up. He vaulted from the platform, each stride grinding bone against gravel. Around him, the conductor's screams blurred with the thunder of iron and steam. Time fractured. Nothing mattered except that child, that tiny body directly in death's path. The shadow of the locomotive stretched long and merciless as Will threw himself forward. His arms closed around soft skin and trembling limbs, and just as the steel monster roared overhead, he rolled, clutching the child to his chest. For a second, just one, there was nothing but dust and silence. Then came the coup. The baby was alive. Will lay panting, heart jackhammering in his chest. His hands, calloused and scarred, trembled as he adjusted the torn sleeve. And then he saw it. The mark. Not just any mark. A perfect star. Burned into his memory, into his soul. His breath caught. The world spun. No, it can't be, but it was. The same exact birthmark he used to kiss every night. He whispered, "Eli." The child blinked, brown eyes, wide and familiar. Eyes that belonged to Will. Eyes that belonged to Sarah. He was shaking. His knees barely held him as he stood, and as the train skidded to a halt, passengers poured out, whispering, gasping. Among them stood a tall woman in a gray traveling dress, sharp cheekbones, pale green eyes. She wasn't shocked. She was watching, measuring, waiting. "Sir," a voice barked. Will turned. It was Conductor Landry. Behind him were 2 rail workers. "You need to step away from that child." Will's jaw tightened. He held Eli closer, the child curling into his chest like he belonged there. "He's mine," Will growled. "He's my boy, taken from me 6 months ago." A hush fell over the crowd. The woman in gray stepped forward. "No, Mr. Holloway, that child belongs to me." The words struck like a slap. She knew his name. How do you?" "Because I've been searching for you," she said smoothly. "This is Thomas Marrow, my nephew." "No," Will snapped. "He's Eli Holloway. Stolen from my ranch. I saw the mark. I know my son." The woman's name was Agnes Marrow. She spun a story her sister died in a fire. The child was orphaned. She took him in. But something was wrong. Everything about her reeked of script. Her eyes didn't meet the child's. Her hands didn't tremble. "Show me his papers," Will demanded. Her smile flickered. The fire destroyed them. Too convenient. A soft voice cut through the tension. "I saw what you did." Will turned. Clara Finch, a woman with nurse's eyes and a battlefield calm, stepped forward. "I'm a former Army medic. I served in Coldwater Valley. That child was on the tracks, alone. That man saved him. And that mark?" She paused. "That's not just coincidence." Agnes bristled. "You don't know what you're talking about." But Clara wasn't done. "I've seen trauma. I've seen lies. And I've seen children ripped from their families." Will's heart cracked. His arms clutched tighter. And then another voice. "You're both wrong." A rough voice drawled. That's my boy. A mountain of a man walked out from behind the rail cars. Dusty boots, hat low, Colt Maddox. Will's blood ran cold. Colt didn't just walk. He stalked like something that used to be a man, and when he pushed back his coat to show a paper, Will saw it. The tattoo. 3 interlocking circles. The mark of Crimson Hollow, the same gang that killed Sarah. No, this was no coincidence. Birth certificate, Colt said, waving a stained paper. Thomas Maddox, born in Tombstone. Too clean, too staged. Then Will saw something else. A bite. Small, faint, on Colt's wrist. Will remembered Eli had bitten one of the raiders. Left his mark. His gut twisted. The world narrowed. This was his son. The train had stopped. The soldiers guarding the military shipment began to approach, hands near their rifles. Tension hung like thunder clouds. Will's voice was gravel. 3 people. 1 baby. You're all lying. He looked to the crowd, who saw her and him exchange looks. Several nodded, and that's when Agnes made a fatal mistake. Colt, we. She froze. The mask slipped. The performance cracked. Will's rage erupted. You're working together. You stole my son. Colt's hand drifted to his holster. Smart man. Too smart. But Will wasn't moving. Clara slid beside him. Whatever you do next, she whispered, make it count. The baby stirred, looked up, touched Will's beard. Eli. Will whispered again, tears burning his eyes. A whistle blew. Behind the train, steam rose. The soldiers readied themselves. It was far from over, but in that moment, under the blazing sun of the western desert, with dust in his eyes and blood in his throat, Will knew one truth. This boy was his, and he would burn the whole world down before he lost him again. The baby whimpered in Will's arms, his small fingers clutching at his shirt, his breath fast, warm, real. Will didn't move, didn't blink. His eyes were locked on Colt Maddox. The outlaw stood still, hand hovering near the pistol on his hip, a twisted grin carved beneath his weather-beaten hat. His coat still flared open, revealing the tattoo, the mark of the Crimson Hollow gang. But now, Will noticed something else, a jagged scar just above the tattoo. Fresh, red, a bite mark. Eli had done that. Agnes stepped between them, voice trembling. He's not yours. Colt, he's my nephew. I've raised him. Save it, Agnes. Will growled. We both know that's a lie. Clara's voice rose behind him, calm, sharp, controlled. I worked in a children's shelter back east. For 6 months, we took in war orphans, rail strays, and sometimes babies brought in by men who couldn't give a straight story. I saw a boy like this once. Same eyes, same birthmark. He was taken by someone who never left a name, just gone. She stepped forward, eyes on Agnes. That wasn't your sister. Was it? Agnes froze. Her throat bobbed. Her eyes darted to Colt. Will turned to Colt now. You say he's yours. You got proof? Colt grinned wider. I do. He pulled out a piece of paper, smooth, creased, aged. A birth certificate. Thomas Maddox, born 18 months ago. Mother deceased, filed in Tombstone. Will didn't take it. Not yet. Instead. He narrowed his eyes. What ink did they use? Colt blinked. What? The ink. On the certificate. You say it's official, so it should have been signed with indigo galate. County clerk in Tombstone switched to that mix last spring. Silence. Will took the paper and looked closer, rubbed his thumb across the signature. The ink didn't smudge. It sparkled, too clean, too new, and under the sun it shimmered violet. Printer's ink, Will said flatly. Used in posters, not legal documents. He crumpled the paper and tossed it. That's fake, the crowd murmured. Clara stepped beside him. He's lying, Colt snarled. That baby is mine, Will snapped. Then explain this. He turned Eli's wrist toward the crowd, the star birthmark glowing under the dust. My wife called it a gift from God. There's not another like it in the whole territory. That's my son. Eli Holloway. Colt's voice dropped low. Dangerous. You think you're the only one who lost something? You think I didn't bury my woman in the middle of a frozen gully because we couldn't feed her no more? You think I didn't sell my gun to buy milk that never came? This kid's got a future I could never give him. You kidnapped him, Will roared. No, Colt hissed. I saved him. From you. Will stepped forward. Fists clenched. Say that again. I saw what was left of your ranch. Colt spat. You call that a life? You let your wife die for nothing. You left your boy alone while you played sheriff. And now you want him back like none of it happened. The words hit like buckshot. Will staggered a step. The guilt rose like fire in his chest. The ranch, the raid, Sarah's screams. He hadn't made it in time. He'd come home to ashes and silence, and a crib, empty. Was Colt right? Had he failed? Eli, no. Clara's voice cut through him, gentle, firm. She placed a hand on Will's arm. Don't listen to him. You didn't abandon your son. You've spent every moment since trying to bring him home. That's what fathers do. Will turned back to Colt, his voice raw. This boy knows me. He stopped crying when I held him. He reached for me, like he remembers. That don't prove a thing. Colt snapped. A child's wail rose. The baby squirmed in Will's arms, tiny hands pawing at his chest. Will began to hum. The lullaby. The one Sarah used to sing. Eli stilled, quieted, eyes locked onto Will's face, recognition shining in that stare. The crowd saw it, felt it. No one breathed. That's not memory, Colt whispered. That's just instinct. Then why are you sweating? Will asked. Colt's jaw tightened. Agnes suddenly stepped forward, pulling a folded paper from her bag. Here, hospital record, Tucson. Lists me as next of kin. That's proof. Will took it. Hands steady now. Clara looked over his shoulder. This stamp's wrong, she said. What Agnes barked. This hospital switched to blue ink stamps 6 months ago. This one's red. Clara turned the page, and this signature. She pointed. Dr. N. Harland. I worked with him, she said. He's been dead for a year. Agnes froze. Then she ran. No one expected it. Her dress flared like a flag in the wind as she bolted into the desert brush behind the station. Colt shouted and lunged after her, but Will was faster. He shifted Eli into Clara's arms. Don't drop him. Then he was off, boots pounding, heart pounding harder. He tackled Agnes behind a stack of crates. Dust flew. She screamed, fought. Let me go. You don't understand. Will held her still. Then make me understand. Tears burst from her eyes. I didn't want any of this. I needed money. My husband is sick, dying. Colt said it was temporary. He said the boy'd go to a good family back east, I thought. You thought what Will roared, that you could sell my son and sleep at night. Agnes sobbed. I didn't know he had a real father. Colt said he said you were dead. Will stood, chest heaving, hands shaking. The crowd had followed, surrounding them. Colt had vanished. The coward ran. Agnes collapsed to her knees. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. Will looked at her, not with pity, with fury. You should have asked. Clara brought Eli back, the boy now asleep. Will scooped him up, trembling. The conductor approached, voice tight. We've got soldiers on board. They're saying we can't delay the cargo. This train moves in 10 minutes. Will nodded slowly, then glanced at Clara. Where's Colt? She looked around. Gone. Will tightened his grip on Eli. He'll be back. Then he turned to Agnes. You're coming with me, to where she asked, broken. Will's eyes were hard. To tell me everything. The sun was falling fast, bleeding red into the desert sky. But Will Holloway's fury burned brighter. He sat on the edge of the station platform, Eli asleep against his chest, wrapped tight in a borrowed blanket. Agnes Marrow sat on a crate across from him, hands bound, eyes downcast, guilt dripping off her like sweat. "You said Colt told you I was dead," Will said, voice low and flat. Agnes nodded. "Why'd you believe him?" She hesitated. "Because he wasn't a stranger. We knew each other." Will's eyes narrowed. How well Agnes looked away. "We met in Santa Fe. He said he worked rail security, needed someone to care for a child while he sorted out legal troubles. He paid well, too well. I didn't ask questions. That's the problem." Will muttered. "Nobody ever asks." He rose slowly and walked to the baby, brushing a hand over the boy's forehead. "You lied," he whispered. "To strangers, to yourself, but not to me." His voice grew cold. "You knew who he was. Agnes, you knew what he was." Her eyes flashed up. "No, I didn't." Will ripped open the coat Colt had left behind. The inside lining was stiff with desert grit, and a folded sheet of paper, a bounty notice. Will unfolded it. His heart stopped. Colton Maddox, wanted in New Mexico territory for murder, child trafficking, and organized assault. Last seen near Crimson Hollow, known affiliate of the Crimson Hollow gang. Will's hands clenched the paper. "This isn't just some drifter. He was part of the gang that raided my ranch, killed my wife, burned everything I ever built." Agnes turned pale. "I didn't know I do." Will snapped. His breath came ragged, rage rising in waves. "He's the one of them." He turned to Clara, who stood nearby, arms folded. Her expression was unreadable. That bite mark on his wrist, that wasn't just any mark. Eli left that. The night Sarah died, he fought back. "My boy bit the bastard who took him." Silence. And then Clara spoke. "You said his certificate was fake. You were right. While you were confronting him, I marked it." Will blinked. "Marked it." She pulled a small vial from her coat. "Glow ink? Harmless. Glows under sunlight. I worked with bounty agents during the war. We used it to trace forgery chains." She uncorked the vial and dabbed the paper Colt had given them. Under the rays of the fading sun, letters began to glow, CM, and a number string, counterfeit registry tag. Clara explained. His documents were bought, traced to a forger out of El Paso. Will exhaled hard. "You thought ahead." "I saw his eyes," Clara said. "Men like that, they don't just lie, they build lies, layer by layer." Will turned back to Agnes. "So now tell me the truth. All of it." Agnes shook her head. "You don't understand." "Then help me," Will said, voice cracking. "Make me understand, because right now, you look like a woman who helped kill my wife." That hit. Agnes collapsed forward, sobbing into her hands. "I never meant for anyone to die." She choked. "I thought I was protecting him, Eli. Colt said the child would be sent east, to a good family, raised in safety. He never said anything about blood or birthmarks or killing." Will crouched in front of her. "Did you see him that night? Did you see my wife die?" "No." Agnes said, "I was never there. Colt came to me after the raid. He had the boy. He was desperate, wanted to hide him. Said bounty hunters were sniffing around. I helped him, because I owed him. Owed him what she hesitated. He saved my husband. Years ago, when our wagon was ambushed near Durango, Colt shot the bandits. Got us to shelter. I never forgot." Will stood. "Debt doesn't cover this." Behind them, the engineer approached Silas Boone, gun slung across his back, sweat dripping from his brow. "Tracks are clear," he said. "We're ready to roll." Will nodded. Any word on Colt Boone shook his head. Disappeared like a damn shadow. But the soldiers checked the tracks. Looks like someone took a horse northbound about an hour ago. Will clenched his jaw. "He's running." Boone nodded. "But not far. You made noise." Holloway. Big noise. Someone's gonna follow the echo. Clara stepped closer. We need to move, now. Will looked down at Eli. The baby stirred, tiny fist gripping Will's collar. He looked up again, eyes burning. Agnes rides with us. I want her watched, but alive. We're not done. She didn't resist as the soldiers lifted her onto the train. Clara helped secure her wrists, then turned to Will. You're not just trying to save your son. She said, You want answers. I want everything. Will replied. He glanced again at the bounty flyer, then tucked it into his coat. Colton Maddox, Crimson Hollow. This wasn't about one baby anymore. It was bigger, deeper. Will stared into the horizon, the desert stretching endlessly, shadows creeping long and sharp. Eli had been taken for a reason. That star-shaped birthmark, once just a family story, had become a brand, a price tag. The train whistle blew again. Will held his son close, his heart thudding hard against Eli's chest, and for the first time in months, he felt it. Not fear, not pain. Purpose. He would find Colt. He would find whoever ordered this madness. And he'd bury them all. The sun had dipped low behind the canyon ridge when the first bullet cracked through the air. It wasn't a warning shot. It was a signal. Will spun, instinct kicking in like a lightning strike. The sharp report echoed off the desert walls as passengers screamed and ducked. Eli was already in Clara's arms, her body shielding the child without hesitation. 3 riders burst over the ridge, dust curling behind them like demons trailing hellfire. Crimson Hollow had come. Cover the train, Will barked, diving behind a supply crate. Silas Boone, still in his engineer's gear, grabbed the rifle he'd stashed behind the coal stack. Told you, trouble had a schedule. Will peered around the freight crates. The riders were splitting, one circling wide, another taking cover behind a mesquite tree, and the third dismounting, calm, methodical, eyes scanning. That's not a thug. Will muttered, That's a scout. More hooves thundered in from the west. 4 more riders, 2 with bandoliers, 1 with a dynamite satchel. They weren't just here to scare, they were here to end it. Clara ducked behind the caboose with Eli. Agnes, hands still bound, crawled toward the coal bin, her face ashen. Will yelled over the chaos. Boone, that tunnel. The old one under the rail yard, you said it was sealed. Boone shook his head, collapsed from the south side, but the north's clear. Why? Will's eyes burned with resolve. We're gonna bait 'em, draw them in, trap 'em from both ends. Boone didn't ask. He just nodded. Another shot ripped through the crate inches from Will's head. Splinters flew. The air stank of gunpowder. Will fired back twice, then bolted down the gravel slope toward the old maintenance track. Bullets kicked dust at his heels. Boone followed, reloading as he ran. Behind them, chaos ruled. One of the Crimson men climbed atop the freight car. From above, he rained bullets like hailstones. Then suddenly pop a clean, distant rifle crack. The shooter dropped with a grunt, falling hard from the roof. Someone had hit him. From the front of the train. Will's eyes flicked up. A figure in a long duster coat crouched on the first car, rifle steady. They adjusted their aim, chambered another round, and fired again, clean, precise, deadly. Who the hell? Boone muttered. Will didn't answer, but in his gut, he knew that wasn't luck. That was training. Inside the tunnel, the air was thick with age. Cobwebs clung to rusted braces, and old lantern brackets lined the curved walls. Will and Boone moved fast, eyes scanning, ears tracking the muffled chaos above. Then they split, Boone heading to the exit, Will looping around toward the flank. That's when he heard a voice. Agnes, above, screaming. He doubled back, boots slipping on gravel. Outside, 2 Crimson men had Clara cornered near the water tank. One yanked at her satchel. The other reached for Eli. Agnes, still tied, charged them like a madwoman. "Leave him!" she screamed. She threw herself against the larger man, biting, clawing. The baby tumbled from his arms into Clara's. The crimson brute punched Agnes hard. She crumpled. Will didn't think. He surged from cover, gun blazing. One man dropped, the other fled. He reached Agnes. Blood trickled from her mouth. She blinked up. "I owed you one." Will shook his head. "That makes us even." More shots rang out from the ridge. That sniper again, cutting down bandits like wheat. Who was he? Will turned toward Boone's signal flare, bright red smoke rising from the tunnel's exit. Time to end it. He sprinted back into the shadows, through the tunnel, and emerged behind the remaining crimson men. They hadn't expected a pincer move. One turned too slow. Will's shot took him in the leg. Boone dropped another. The third tried to flee, but the sniper's bullet hit home. Silence fell. Only the desert wind and the crackling of spent gunpowder remained. Bodies lay scattered. The train smoked. Eli cried softly. Clara held him close. Will exhaled. It was over. Or, so he thought. Later, as the soldiers tended to the wounded and passengers crawled from hiding, Will approached the figure on the front car. The sniper removed his hat, a square-jawed man with steel-gray eyes and a scar running down his cheek. "Name's Rourke," he said simply. U.S. Marshal. Been trailing Maddox for months, heard rumors of a sale, a child with a star birthmark. Thought it was just another myth. Will nodded. "It's real." Rourke glanced at Eli. "That kid's worth a fortune to the right devils." Will's jaw clenched. Not anymore. Rourke handed over a leather-bound notebook. Inside were sketches, names, descriptions, buyers. "Follow the leads in there," Rourke said. "But keep your head low. There are bigger snakes in this pit than you've seen." Then he tipped his hat and vanished, walking toward the horizon like a ghost. Will watched him go. He knew one thing now. Clearer than ever, Crimson Hollow wasn't just a gang. It was a network. And they weren't done yet. The quiet after battle is worse than the bullets. Will Holloway sat beside the dying fire. Eli asleep in his lap. The boy's breath was soft, steady, for the first time in months. He looked at peace, but Will wasn't. Rourke's notebook weighed heavy in his coat pocket. The pages were filled with names most he didn't know, some he wished he didn't. One of them carved itself into his brain. Deputy Finch, friend, brother-in-arms. The man who once saved Will's life in the Red Mesa ambush 5 years ago dragged him bleeding across the rocks, joked about whiskey while stitching his leg. The same man who gave Will the tip about this train. The same one who swore he'd never stop helping him find Eli. Will gritted his teeth. How do you forgive a man who sold your son? He didn't sleep that night. Dawn. The telegraph office in Carson's Bluff buzzed with traffic. Messages flew up and down the line, official reports, casualty logs, and one coded request from U.S. Marshal Rourke to Washington. Will stood by the window, staring out at the orange sky. Agnes sat nearby, wrists unbound now, but watched closely by a soldier. She looked smaller, somehow hollowed. He didn't speak, not until she did. It was bigger than I knew. She whispered. Colt wasn't the boss, just one of many. Will turned slowly. You knew what they did, and you still said yes. My husband was dying, Agnes said, voice cracking. We couldn't afford medicine. Colt promised the child would be safe, loved. I wanted to believe him. Will's voice cut like a blade. So you traded one life for another. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know about Sarah. I didn't know Eli already had a father who'd die to find him. That's the thing, Will said. You didn't care to know. He reached into his coat and tossed Rourke's notebook onto the table. It flopped open to a page with a symbol, an elaborate crest with interlocking letters. Agnes paled. "You found it. What is it?" She licked her lips. "A house. European. Old money. I only heard them called one thing. The Bleeding Crown." Will frowned. "That sounds like a ghost story." "No." She said, "They pay for children. Not just any. Ones with distinguishing marks, albinos, twins, birthmarks like Eli's. They think it means something: luck, purity, prophecy. I don't know. And Finch." She looked away. "They needed lawmen, people to control the flow. He connected the right parents to the right smugglers, covered the tracks, buried evidence." Will clenched his fists. "He was my friend." Agnes's voice softened. "He saved your life once. Doesn't mean he deserved your trust forever." Hour later, a horse thundered into the bluff. A deputy dismounted. Dust clung to his boots, his face pale, eyes darting. Will stepped from the shade, arms crossed. "Finch," he said. The man froze. "Will I heard there was trouble, I bet you did." Silence stretched. Finch swallowed. "You found the boy." Will didn't answer. He just held up the notebook, opened it to the marked page. Finch's face drained. "I can explain." "No." Will said, "You can confess." Finch's hand twitched near his holster. Will saw it, but didn't flinch. "You told me to take that train. You said there'd be leads." "There were." Finch said, I didn't know they'd hit so soon, liar." Will's voice dropped. "You gave them my schedule. You stalled my search. You fed me dead ends for 6 months while my son was being passed around like freight." Finch's jaw clenched. "They paid me to mislead you. That's all. I didn't know about the kid." "You didn't ask." Will growled. "Same as Agnes." A long silence. Then Finch said quietly, "You gonna shoot me?" Will stepped closer. "No." He pulled out a set of irons and snapped them on the man's wrists. "But I'll watch you hang," as soldiers hauled Finch away. Will turned to Clara, who had arrived with Eli. "Is it ever over?" he asked. She looked down at the boy. "Not yet." The doctor's office in Carson's Bluff was quiet. Too quiet. Will sat by the window, staring into nothing. Eli cradled in his arms. The boy slept soundly, his breath rising and falling like tide against his father's chest. The star-shaped birthmark was exposed, glowing soft against Eli's wrist. It had once made him special. Now, it made him a target. "Mr. Holloway," Dr. Hemsley said gently from the other room. "We're ready whenever you are." Will didn't answer. Clara sat nearby, brushing Eli's hair with her fingers. Her eyes were glassy, but calm. "Do you want me to carry him in?" Will shook his head. "He stays in my arms." He rose, legs heavy, heart heavier. They walked down a short hall to a room that smelled of antiseptic and smoke. An oil lamp burned in the corner, beside it. The doctor laid out instruments, small, sharp, wicked. Will winced. Dr. Hemsley adjusted his spectacles. The method simple: a hot wire, thin enough to alter skin pigmentation. There will be scarring, but no one will know what was there before. Will looked down at his son, and the pain. The doctor hesitated. "He'll cry, but we'll numb it as best we can. He's young, he'll forget." Will's throat tightened. "I won't." They laid Eli on a padded cot. Clara held his hand, humming softly, as the doctor lit the branding wire. Will paced. "This is wrong." He muttered, "I shouldn't have to do this." Clara didn't speak. Then Eli stirred. His lips moved. One word: "Mama." Will froze. The doctor stopped. Eli whispered again, "Mama." Then he whimpered, and turned his head, seeking something that wasn't there. Will pressed a hand to his chest, the grief sudden and sharp. Sarah's name was still alive in their boy's dreams. He looked at Clara. Her face said it all. "This will break you." He leaned down, kissed Eli's forehead. "Forgive me," he whispered. Then he nodded to the doctor. It was over in moments. But the scream, Eli's first sharp cry, cut through Will like a blade. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood like stone as Clara scooped the boy up, rocked him, whispered to him. Eli clung to her, sobbing. And Will, he turned away, because if he saw his son's eyes right now, he might not survive it. That night, Clara sat beside the cot, wiping Eli's brow with a damp cloth. The burn was clean, neat, already wrapped. Will stood in the doorway, a shadow. "He's strong," she said softly. Will nodded, like his mother. Clara glanced up. "You didn't say goodbye to her, did you?" Will's jaw clenched. "Didn't have time. I found her, after." There was no body left to bury, just her locket. Clara rose, walked over. She'd be proud. "You did what no man should ever have to do." He shook his head. "I branded my own son. You saved him," she said firmly. "And now he gets to live, not hide, not run." Will turned to Eli. The boy now slept peacefully again, his face calm, innocent. "It's not fair," Will whispered. "He's already lost so much, and he still has you," Clara said. "That's everything." Silence stretched between them. Then Clara added, "I'm not leaving. Not yet. I want to help, if you'll let me." Will looked at her. For the first time, really looked. She wasn't just a nurse, not just a witness. She was family now, forged in fire. "Thank you," he said simply. Dawn. Will opened his journal, the same leather book he carried since the war. He turned to a blank page and began to write. His name is Eli Holloway, but the world will never know it. They'll know Thomas Hartwell, a boy with no mark, no bounty, no past to chase him. But I'll know. Every time I see him smile, every time I hear him laugh, I'll know what I gave up to give him peace. And if the shadows ever return, I'll be ready. He closed the book, stepped outside. The wind was rising again, but this time, it didn't feel like warning. It felt like promise. The ranch sat on the edge of a cottonwood grove, where the land turned soft and the wind sang low. It wasn't much, 2 rooms, a stable, a creek that ran clean in spring, but to Will Holloway, it was everything. His name wasn't Will anymore. He was William Hartwell now, and his son no longer Eli. The world knew him as Thomas, but in the quiet moments when no one watched, Will still whispered the truth, still called him son. It'd been 5 years, 5 years since the train, since the screams and the gunfire, since Will made a choice no father should ever face. The birthmark was gone. In its place, a pale scar that faded with time, but never truly disappeared. Eli grew fast, strong, the kind of boy who rode before he walked straight, sharp with a rifle, kind to animals, always asking questions. But one question never faded. "Pa," he asked one night by the fire, "did I ever have a mother?" Will paused. Clara looked up from her sewing. Will met her eyes, then turned back to the boy. "Yes," he said softly. "She was brave, and she loved you more than the stars." "Did she die?" Will nodded. Eli fell silent, then asked, "Was I too small to remember?" Will's voice cracked. "You remember her, just enough?" The boy didn't ask again. Town. People knew them as the quiet folks from the North Ridge. Clara took the name Miss Hartwell, though she and Will never married. It didn't matter. They shared a bond deeper than names. She ran the books, cooked, taught Eli to read, sometimes, when no one was looking. Will caught her brushing Eli's hair like Sarah used to do. He never stopped her. They were a family now. Forged, not born. Agnes served 2 years. Cooperated. Named names. Exposed a network that reached deep into both coasts and overseas. The Bleeding Crown took a hit, but not a fatal one. They vanished underground, changed names, changed faces. The price on Eli's head may have disappeared, but Will never forgot. So he wrote, page after page, their story, names, faces, dates, secret places. He sealed it in oilskin, carved for justice into the leather, and mailed it under an alias to the U.S. Marshal Service. No return address, just hope. One autumn morning, Eli, now 10, rode back from town alone. He tied his horse, stormed inside, and slapped a newspaper on the table. The headline read, Tombstone Clerk Found Dead Tattoo Matches, Crimson Hollow Symbol. Will froze. Clara read the article. It's starting again. She said, Will nodded, or never stopped. That night, he walked the perimeter, checked the windows, re-oiled the rifle, just in case. Eli watched from the porch. Pa, he said, why do you always look over your shoulder? Will didn't answer. Instead, he walked over, crouched, and took his son's hand. Felt the scar. You know how lightning leaves marks on the earth? He asked. Eli nodded. This one, Will said, brushing the boy's wrist. Was lightning. Did it hurt? Will's voice caught. Yes. Then why didn't you stop it? Will stared into those brown eyes. Because I loved you more than it hurt. A week later, Eli was target shooting behind the barn. Clara called for supper. The boy didn't answer. Will stepped outside, heart racing. But then, a shot, then 2. He rushed to the back and froze. Eli stood calm, breathing steady. 3 bottles, 3 hits, dead center. Will smiled, but in his chest, something twisted. That kind of aim didn't come from just practice. It came from blood. Eli looked at him. Did you teach me that? Will shook his head. No, your mother did. The boy smiled, proud, but Will's heart was heavy, because one day, Eli would ask again about the scar, about the whispers in town, about the nightmares that sometimes woke him up screaming. And when that day came, Will would tell him everything. But not yet. Tonight, they'd eat stew, watch the stars, and pretend just a little longer that peace could last forever. If this story stirred something deep inside you, if it made you hold your breath, clutch your heart, or wipe your eyes in the dark, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel, because out here in the Wild West, every scar tells a story, and every story hides another trail of truth. Click on the next tale waiting for you, where justice rides with a 6-shooter, and the past never stays buried. This ain't the end. It's just the next campfire.